It's a sturdy table. Look at this. Here comes the authority. Get him to Dean Ambrose.
Wrestling Warriors, here on Matt Mysteries, we drop fresh WWE news every day. Subscribe, and let's suplex our way into the stories. Tonight, the truth behind the WarGames mystery finally cracked open, and the revelation was far more shocking than anyone expected. Dean Ambrose made a stunning return to Raw, stepping out of the shadows and straight into the heart of Seth Rollins' carefully crafted narrative. For weeks, the WWE Universe has been fed twists, confessions, and finger-pointing, but none of it seemed to land quite right. Each revelation felt a little too tidy, a little too convenient. Now, Ambrose, Rollins' former brother-in-arms, and the man who knows him better than any living soul, has shattered that illusion and exposed the deeper manipulation buried beneath Rollins' confident speeches. Tonight wasn't about returning to the spotlight. It was about cracking open the biggest cover-up the WWE audience has witnessed in years. The WarGames mystery that never stopped twisting for weeks. The WarGames mystery has twisted WWE into knots. First, Austin Theory was identified as the attacker. Then Seth Rollins, positioning himself as the heroic truth-teller of Raw, stepped forward with an even grander revelation, pointing to MVP and Bobby Lashley as the masterminds behind the chaos. The story aligned a little too perfectly. Too clean, too polished, too theatrical. Every twist came with a flourish that felt engineered, rather than discovered. For many fans, something didn't sit right, but without proof, the WWE Universe had no choice but to accept the story. Tonight, however, Ambrose tore the curtain down and revealed the architect behind the entire narrative. Ambrose returns to tear down the illusion. Seth Rollins was mid-speech, basking in his own self-congratulation and preaching about justice, truth, and his unbreakable dedication to solving mysteries, when suddenly the arena plunged into darkness. The audience erupted as the lights returned to reveal Dean Ambrose standing right behind him, eyes wild and unwavering, carrying that unmistakable aura of unpredictable honesty. Ambrose didn't give Rollins time to react. He simply leaned forward and delivered a line that froze the entire arena. "Still lying, Seth." It wasn't just a statement. It was a verdict. It was the return of a man who had spent months watching Rollins rewrite reality into a polished script. And tonight, Ambrose had come to tear out every page. Ambrose knows the man behind the mask. Ambrose's return wasn't driven by chaos or vengeance. It was driven by familiarity. He knows Seth Rollins more intimately than most wrestlers ever will. They have fought together, bled together, and turned on each other in ways that have shaped WWE history. What Ambrose saw in Rollins these past weeks wasn't the heroic visionary that Rollins claimed to be. It was the performer. Seth plays a role better than anyone. The hero, the villain, the visionary, the martyr. But Ambrose has always been able to see past the costume and into the gears turning behind Rollins' eyes. He knew the WarGames case wasn't a mystery Rollins solved. It was a mystery Rollins crafted. The receipts that pulled the thread. Ambrose began circling Rollins in the ring like a man revealing the final chapter of a long investigation. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. A symbolic gesture that froze Rollins in place, because Ambrose wasn't waving around accusations, he was holding evidence. According to Ambrose, the bank records Seth exposed were planted. The confession from MVP was coerced. The narrative Rollins presented week after week wasn't discovered through loyalty or brilliance. It was constructed layer by layer, piece by piece, with Seth Rollins controlling the story from the shadows. "You told a beautiful story," Ambrose said, "but you forgot I know how you think." The crowd roared, sensing the foundation beneath Rollins beginning to crack. The theory, the framing, and the real master plan. Ambrose turned toward the crowd and cut straight to the heart of the revelation. Seth Rollins didn't reveal the WarGames mystery. He invented it. He hired Austin Theory. He constructed the scenario that implicated MVP and Bobby Lashley. He framed them to present himself as the virtuous figure who solved the very crisis he manufactured. This wasn't just manipulation. It was storytelling as a weapon. According to Ambrose's breakdown, Seth created a crisis solely so he could stand at the center of Raw as the savior who put the puzzle together. What looked like investigative brilliance was actually narrative engineering, designed to elevate Rollins' status as the indispensable hero of WWE. Rollins' greatest deception. Exposed with each sentence Ambrose delivered, Seth Rollins' expression shifted from shock to a defensive tension he couldn't quite hide. Ambrose laid out the pattern he had been tracking. Seth Rollins thrives on control of the atmosphere, of the narrative, of perception. To Ambrose, this crisis wasn't about WarGames or about helping any team win. It was about Seth Rollins building a story in which he appeared irreplaceable. Rollins had inserted himself into a conspiracy that he himself constructed, presenting each twist as evidence of his brilliance, while burying the real truth beneath layers of performance. Ambrose framed the situation not as an attack on Rollins' character, but as a revelation of his craft. Rollins wasn't just a manipulator. He was a master narrator gone unchecked. A psychological blueprint of manipulation. The picture Ambrose painted was not one of physical destruction or on-screen violence. It was psychological theater. Rollins had weaponized narrative structure itself. He built tension, created villains, forged false connections, and unveiled them one step at a time. Ambrose described it as a narrative architecture of terrifying scale. Not because it harmed anyone in real life, but because in WWE storytelling terms, it showcased Rollins' ability to construct an elaborate illusion. The real twist wasn't the identity of the attacker. It was the identity of the storyteller. Ambrose exposed Rollins as the mastermind behind the entire saga, orchestrating every detail to place himself as the heroic center. The WWE Universe left in shock. The arena didn't know how to react. The fans who had believed Rollins' storylines were forced to re-examine every clue. Those who had been skeptical felt validated, and Seth Rollins, standing in the center of the ring with his narrative unraveling around him, suddenly looked like a man who might have underestimated the one opponent who could decode his every move. Ambrose didn't attack Rollins. He didn't ambush him. He dismantled the narrative Seth had spent weeks building, piece by piece, using nothing but truth and insight. The shockwaves from that revelation will ripple into every storyline connected to the WarGames aftermath. The blueprint has been exposed. What comes next? Tonight didn't just expose a conspiracy. It exposed the storyteller behind it. With Ambrose back and Rollins' narrative blueprint unmasked, the WWE Universe now sits at the edge of a brand new chapter. Rollins' greatest strength, his ability to shape and control the story, has been turned against him by the one man who can spot every twist before it happens. What happens next is unpredictable. Will Rollins defend himself? Will Ambrose produce more evidence? Will the wrestlers Rollins implicated strike back now that the truth is out? The WarGames mystery may have been solved, but the aftermath is just beginning, and the fallout is guaranteed to reshape Raw's landscape.